What's the one thing that has helped your rest and recovery more than anything else?
Eating enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can definitely tell the difference when I'm under eating versus eating enough.
Good
And
answer.
that's a big, yeah. I think a lot of people, it's interesting. I don't know if you've noticed a lot with your clients. I haven't worked as a nutrition coach for a while, but I think a lot of people actually probably chronically undereat more than I think they
I see that all the
100%.
time.
Yeah.
See it all the time.
Which is interesting. I think everyone, I'm trying to lose weight, just eat less. But anyway, that's a whole, we've had that discussion. But I think a lot of people chronically undereat. And so you're running on low power mode. And so then things like recovery and your immune system and all this stuff go out. So I when I'm eating enough, a huge difference for me. So.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that, but then also sleep. So
for sure.
I might be okay the next day if I, didn't get a full night's sleep, but it's usually day 2 that I feel like I have brain fog.
Mm-hmm.
My body starts to ache. I, mentally just don't have the drive to want to work out. I will work out, but, I don't necessarily want to.
Mm-hmm.
And then it feels like, I just have a harder time getting things organized in my brain as far as, what I need to do.
Yeah.
I would say along the lines of eating, walking, moving after I eat. I think that plays a role as far as how restful a sleep I get. For example, I mean, it all ties together. But for example, if I eat dinner, I go for a walk afterwards. That helps stabilize my blood sugar, and then I get a more restful sleep. Now I'm well fed, I'm well rested. So, I mean, that's something that I kind of think of as like a recovery activity. And also if I'm a little extra sore from that day's workout or something like that, it kind of flushes me a little bit as well.
Yeah. I think a big one too is not having shitty programming. I think a lot of people are sore because their workouts are either random or they're doing too much or they're increasing their intensity or volume or load or all this stuff too much from week to week. So I think, we've talked about this even with like the need to have a deload week. You could argue that if your programming is intentional enough and you're controlling all these styles, that you probably don't need to do deloads that often for most people. But I think if you're kind of continually sore, one of those big areas is like, what are your workouts? Like, are you doing too much? Are you not recovering because or is it the balance of what you're doing is not enough or all that kind of different stuff? So
I got 2 things to bring to the table. One is more from the physical perspective, just kind of what I do. The other one is more from an intake perspective, what I put in. And practicing or making sure I'm paying attention to my zone 1, zone 2 training after more intense training sessions. And even when I'm just feeling tired or fatigued in general, and being okay with that, but doing that on a regular basis has really helped my recovery in terms of moving into the next workout. So like that zone 1, zone 2 recovery.
That's kind of along the lines of the walk.
Exactly. Yeah. And I still do that nightly, every single night. I still make sure I get out and get my walk in and try to hit my steps. Right? That's still a thing. I know it might sound funny. And I know I used to make fun of people for trying to get their steps. But for me, there's a certain, I get like there's routine to it.
Do you think it's meditative for you?
It's 100% meditative for me, and that's what I didn't credit it with. It's getting out, kind of unwinding and down regulating, which helps me settle down at the end of the day, quiet the puppy in my head or puppies. Sometimes it means like I'm listening to a podcast. Sometimes I even listen to ours, listen back to self-critique and provide feedback. But sometimes it's talking to a buddy and just catching up, which is super important as well for me. But that I don't want to get too far on that path. But yes, it's down regulating. That the other thing that I've done is more of an intake. And so it was about a year ago I partnered with these guys from a company called Bioprotein Tech, and they provide a few different products. But the one they're really known for at BioPro is their basically it's a non-synthetic alternative to human growth hormone, and it's a naturally derived supplement. I actually kind of tested this out with them because I was a little skeptical about it. I had some questions about it, and I talked with the crew over there, and they got me set up with like a 30-day supply of this stuff. And I was also taking, at the time when I first started, I jumped in with, they have their product's called Cortisleep. And again, that is another naturally derived oral type of supplement. And I have to tell you, that shit like 100% changed the game for me in terms of my rest and recovery. And to the extent where I'm like, is this placebo? Is this working or not? I came off it for a little bit of time, and I recognized right away when I was off, things changed. When I went back on, things change. When I say on, I just mean being regular with my intake. So I think there's a couple things that have really helped me there. Some is just behavior, and some of it sometimes is, kind of what you're putting in too. Like you mentioned, it fits right in there with eating enough.
Yeah.
Right. If you're not eating enough and you're undernourished, you can imagine your body is not going to be running optimally or resting or recovering properly. So those are good inputs. Probably not what a lot of people thought. Like obviously sleep is important, but how you get there is even more important.
Nobody mentioned cryo or infrared or like none of these ice baths. None of those? No biohacks?
No, there's no hacks, man.
What's one piece of fitness advice that you hear all the time but think is totally overrated and even counterproductive?
Yeah, the no days off thing, right? Just work harder. That bothers me a little bit because I think that's said by a person who truly doesn't understand what the hell they're even talking about. Like I respect consistency, hard work, grit, getting it done when you don't want to, all of that stuff. But to just simply kind of make this blanket statement like no days off, just go, you'll sleep when you're dead kind of attitude thing. I think it's ridiculous. I did practice that for a long time. And I can tell you, while there was times where I was fit, I was also unhealthy. Right. And in a couple of different ways. And so, that just grind until you die thing, that kind of stuff bothers me in terms of, I don't think it's specific to fitness advice all the time. But that one bugs me. There's several others, but that I think gets in front of people. Like they think they have to do it all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's not realistic. And I don't think it actually gets people the results that they think they're getting.
Well, and I think kind of tied to that of doing, having to do all of this is I think a lot of people actually think they need to do a lot more than they need to versus being consistent with that. So even for myself, there'd be a long time where if I didn't have my 2-hour window to hit the gym, I just wouldn't even work out. Just throw my hands out. So game changer for me, but I try to preach to a lot of clients is that there's so much data, there's so much anecdotal data too to show that even just doing 15-minute little workouts, doing that is always better than doing nothing. If we're managing those things like recovery, you're not doing too much, all that kind of stuff. But you don't need to be doing an hour and a half of hard lifting or do 15 exercises every single time. Right. It's the consistency of doing them week after week. And that can be a big impact for a lot of people.
Yep. Great.
I'm having a hard time over here thinking of something.
Like overrated fitness advice?
I got one.
I'm sure you do.
If I'm looking to lose weight or lose fat, do more cardio. If I want to increase my caloric expenditure, do more cardio. Yeah, we brought it up in a recent recording, but I think that's probably the most flawed advice that I see the most often, and it does seem to be geared a little more towards women than men, but men do fall prey to I'm trying to lose weight. I need to just go out and pound the pavement jogging with poor form, and then my joints hurt really bad, and then that's the only time I do that.
And then I'll push back on one that I actually went to for a long time was the opposite of you don't need to do cardio. I just lift weights and my heart rate goes up. So that's cardio, right? So there's, doing too much cardio. You need to hammer that for losing weight, but also people who preach that you don't need to do cardio. You can only lift and that's it.
Yeah, I really loathe the cardio as a fat loss tool kind of advice. It doesn't make any sense to me logically, rationally at any level. If all you're judging your fitness by is what you see in the mirror with regard to a body fat percentage, and you think that in order to change that and your health and your physique is purely predicated on that, you don't understand what's going on internally and how that type of exercise can benefit you otherwise, and how detrimental it can be if that's what you're thinking cardio needs to be used for. Because if that's where your mindset is, the application that people use in order to get that done just goes into an entirely different rabbit hole. And there's so much shit that goes along with that. Everything from going out and spending money on gadgets to, thinking you have to be in some type of a HIIT training routine in order to do all of this stuff. Just starts to pile on. I mean, that you could have nailed the worst one on the planet.
Yeah, I think it discourages people from getting started as well, because they think that, okay, if I want to start my fitness journey or my weight loss journey, I'm just going to be running all the time. I hate running. I hear that so often. I hate running. I hate running. And so I can't I can't do this because you're just going to make me run. Like, no, I'm actually not going to make you run.
Quit before you even started.
All.
Yeah.
Listening to the three of you, something that comes back to my mind, and I really hesitate saying it just because I don't want to bash, but it's gonna sound like I'm bashing it. But it's that company out there that markets to individuals who want to lose weight, or women who are in their 40s and you need to come and do this circuit training. And that's probably one of the last things that women need to do at that age, with everything that's going on as far as what they're entering into at that period of time in their life. So yes, I'm talking about perimenopause, because perimenopause can start anywhere between 10 to 15 years prior, to going into perimenopause itself. And so, the marketing wheel, as far as, get your heart rate zone up to here, and this is your fat burning zone, and those types of things. So I think that is something that has been very detrimental, that maybe people don't stop to think too much about, because they constantly see on social media, this messaging as work hard, go do this, do HIIT, and that's not what they need probably.
Very, very good point. There are several brands that are doing that, and I appreciate you not trying to bash anybody. I'll fucking say it. Like Orange Theory was kind of top of the heap. I have a very good friend that works for a very large corporation that owns multiple brands, and they're all selling the same shit on a different piece of equipment. For the most part, and they are targeting a very specific, market segment. You just nailed it. And it's probably the worst advice you could be giving a lot of these people. I'm not saying it's bad for everybody, but I'm saying if your goal is to build muscle, right, be healthier, stronger, more fit, and then lose body fat at the same time, man, you've really set them up for failure.
Yeah.
For the long term. That's not to say that everybody is going to, come out of that thing unhealthy. I just don't think they're going to get what they're being sold if they continue down that path too long. So that's a really good one. I really hadn't thought of.
What are some key exercises that can help young athletes build foundational strength to minimize injury later in life?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I'm glad people are asking this one. We just recently had one of our former coaches that was here for quite some time, Ryan Reyes, was on the show, and we talked a lot about training youth athletes, but more specifically, like without even categorizing them as athletes, like training the youth that's out there, and specifically around like what's a good process for this, and how do we be process driven instead of outcome driven, right? And more specifically, like what are the things that these kids need in order to over time progress to be in a position to then express this athleticism that they're starting to gain as they're maturing and being less awkward, and the different stages of life and things, and based on their sport that they may be playing, or just the life that they're living, right? Great question. So the question is specifically around like what exercises. I'm going to start with getting people to stop thinking about it as exercise, right? Like that would be my first piece of advice. Get your kids to move. Get them to move more, and get them doing it in a way that's fun.
It's play.
Where they get to play.
Yeah.
And part of that is sometimes forcing them, being the parent and parenting them into getting off the couch, away from the iPad, the video game, the whatever, and getting out and just playing.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, kids just stopped playing.
Yes.
And maybe there were a lot of kids that were sitting on a couch somewhere in a room reading a book, but we saw way more kids out playing than anything else. So I would say get your kids out moving and start that with the play. And I think the sooner you can start that with them, the better.
Yeah.
And find something, because then they get exposure to a lot of different things, and they can figure it out, and you can figure it out on how to help get them into the place that makes the most sense for them. But playing is important because it most oftentimes means moving. Kids are going to naturally do that.
Yeah.
Not playing a video game, playing something, right?
Physically moving,
Physically
right?
moving
Yeah, there's so
around.
much that can come from playing, as far as just coordination and
Hand-eyes.
thank you. Coordination and balance, and, being reactive, and learning how to have upper body strength and lower body strength as well, and how to use your body unilaterally. And, you were talking about playing. And one of the things that I remember, as far as with Callie being smaller or being little, and one of the things that the schools and daycares took away was some of the playground equipment. And
Wild.
I think it's really shameful because, monkey bars. I was on the monkey ball
Oh,
all the time. And to be able to move your body weight and to support your body weight as
sure.
a kid, and then how that translates
Grip
as
strength.
you get older,
Yeah.
grip strength, absolutely. And how that translates when you get older and you decide that you want to go into organized sport or whatever. And, you know, I feel like that was really unfortunate because not just the monkey bars, but then bars in general, you know, sit on them and spin on them and,
The
you know,
kids get
hold
hurt.
on to them. But yeah, it became a liability.
That's
But you know what?
it's what
It
happens
also
when you
built
play.
some
Yeah.
resilience,
Yeah,
right?
Fucking A.
Get up, knock off the dust, let's go.
Yeah.
Is that shit broken? No, then you're gonna be just fine. So they're gonna get better. It's gonna get worse.
Is it broken? Are you bleeding? Let's go.
Get back in there and play. I agree.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's fun. I started training recently. I don't know if you guys saw, I started training the 15-year-old in the gym.
Yep.
And, you know, I'm doing some of the basic movement patterns with him, but half the time too, I'm just also playing with, like, we're literally throwing a ball. I'm doing little races with him, different stuff like that, you know, and he's not even a young kid. So even if you're younger, it's even more fed into that. So I think that's just moving and playing. And then I think a big component about this is not getting your kid pigeonholed in one sport too soon. I see that so much, so much.
It's all baseball all the time.
And that's
whatever.
Yeah. So they're in their school sport of whatever, hockey, volleyball, football, whatever. And then as soon as that season ends, they go into the club version of it and they're playing a sport year round, which that's really a lot of that is, again, yes, there's good with getting into exercise and things like that, but having them play different sports where they're getting different forces, where they're having to move in different ways, where they're having to get different hand-eye coordination, different development. Like, don't get your 8-year-old in one sport and have them not play another sport or other activity for the rest and, you know, until through their adolescence. So
yeah, I think there's a lot of drivers to that. I think parents get comfortable. There's also like, oh, my kid's really good at that. Well, he keeps practicing that skill. He's going to get better at it, but does that mean he's going to be a professional athlete or get the college scholarship or whatever else? The reality of that is probably not. But the point of that being is like, I get that you find that routine. There's the friend group. There's the social aspect that goes with that. But yeah, down the line, there's so many things that get left off the table.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know what I hear probably the biggest reason is from parents, because I talk with them, is always that, oh, well, if I don't, they're going to get left behind because all the other kids are doing that. Their skills are going to get left behind because they're not continuing into the next lesson and doing it again and constantly doing it. So
yeah, but again, go back to the consistency. Well, you don't know that because you've never tried it, and doing it one time doesn't count.
Yeah,
right. You got to continually do it, and you just have to accept that. So I think that's part of it. The other thing is like what exercises. They just need to know how to move their body. Yeah. So learning how to run, learning how to fall down, that's an exercise, right? Learning how to get up, that's another exercise. Yeah. Learning how to move sideways, that's an exercise. And when you're involved laterally is what we're talking about. Yeah. Like spinning around and rotating and again, falling down and being awkward. Those are the exercises. Those are the movements, particularly at the younger ages, right? And then as they progress, based on their progression and where they are in their maturity process and their experience process, then you can start layering on other things. And those basic things are, can this kid squat, right? Can this kid pull? Can they push-ups? Body weight squats, right? Can they do like an inverted pull-up, right? Like on we used to have the parallel bars at the park, or on the playground. We don't fucking have those anymore. But doing an inverted pull-up, those kind of pulling themselves up onto equipment or things like that. Those are the exercises that your kid needs. They don't need exercise equipment. They need to get outside and climb through the exercise equipment that's provided for them in life, which is fences and buildings and rocks at the park and benches and, bicycles and, swinging bats and kicking balls and catching balls and all that kind of stuff. Like, get outside and have a catch with your fucking kid in the front or the backyard or in the park across the street. Have a catch, right? Hand-eye coordination. Yeah, it might be a little painful for you as a parent to get through that and whatever, but it might be good for you to get out there and also move your ass. Those are the exercises that I think kids need to do. And then as they progress, yes, there's a time and place to start introducing things like resistance training. But if your kid doesn't know how to move, they have no business being loaded.
Control.
Yeah, exactly. Move with control. They don't have any business being loaded with weights. Yeah. So when that starts happening, they're human beings. Yeah. And the application of resistance training should be applied to them just the same as it is anybody. It's not going to stunt their fucking growth. It's not going to do things to their growth plates. It's not going to mess them up.
Applied appropriately.
If applied appropriately, they should be doing these things. but they shouldn't be running with parachutes, doing fucking plyo jumps with weight vests on, all this kind of stuff when they're that young. Those are advanced movements. And if they can't, again, going back to the other question we had about like, those are speed and power type things. If they don't have the base level strength and ability to move and control that, well, then they have no business being in some type of an exercise progression where we are now loading the speed and power movement.
Yeah.
Like, so things to think about. I would never pick and say, these are the best exercises. I would just say, if you're thinking about exercise as something with a barbell or a dumbbell or a kettlebell or whatever else, yeah, there's utility on all that shit, but your kid needs to move. Like, get them outside playing, like we mentioned. And if you're going to get them involved in sports, get them involved in multiple sports.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. There will be a time where they'll have to choose if they want to pursue something. But particularly when they're young, get them in all kinds of stuff. And there's obviously there's club sports, or what I mean by that is like racket and club sports like softball, baseball, tennis, pickleball, whatever's you're gonna have them doing. They have those kind of sports. There are other things like swimming, that you could get them. Obviously, basketball. I would not recommend. As a guy who grew up playing it, but I wasn't allowed to play till I got to high school. I wouldn't recommend football for the little kids, the tackle football anyway. But flag football exists, so get them involved in that. All those kinds of things. Shit, golf. If you like to golf and you want to fucking take them out golfing and teach them how to move there. Don't get a cart, make them fucking walk, that kind of thing. And then the last thing, one of the ones I really like that I think is super underrated, but also at the same time, it's very popular, just not with everybody, is jiu-jitsu. BJJ is fucking awesome for kids. There's hand-eye coordination. There's strength and conditioning that's involved there. There's a certain endurance component. There's mental and physical grit that goes into that. There's a sense of individuality that goes into it. They can also have a little bit of style and personality in the way they express themselves out on the mat. They get big kids to roll with, little kids to roll with, right? Kids that are really good, kids that aren't so good. They get to win, they get to lose, right? And they get to do it on their own. And it's like a couple hours a week. You take them in there, and what you end up finding there is like my experience with this is the kids crave going back because there's a lot of achievement outside that they get every time they go versus going to a practice, never really being able to measure that achievement until it's game time. And these days it's like, we don't count who wins or loses. It doesn't matter. Well, that changes. It may, if you can kind of hide in the shadows of like, we're on the team. It's not really my fault. It's the team thing. But when you're on the mat with as a kid, like you fucking know, like, like if you just got choked out or, got submitted or whatever, you didn't do a good job there, right? Or whatever. That shit's important too. So, but in the movement piece and the exercise piece, like things that are going to get your kids moving, but also teach them some lessons in that sense that they can apply later. The other thing I like about that particular sport, I'll just plug it again, is that they can take it with them their entire life. You never have to stop jiu-jitsu. At some point, baseball is going to end.
Yeah.
Right? And you can play some pickup thing, and it's seasonal and all that stuff. Jiu-jitsu never has to end. Any city in a country that you go to now anymore is going to have a BJJ school. Some are better than others, but you're going to have something you could put your kid in, or as an adult, they can continue to practice, and it still builds all that same stuff. So get your kids moving. Don't think about it as exercise. Think it as playing, having fun, and building on foundations that allow them to do that more frequently, more often, with less chance of injury and more chance of success.